Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to the Warrant Committee meeting for this evening. We have a few items to discuss tonight, but first, can we review the minutes of the meeting from the 4th of February last week, which you've all received electronically. Has anybody any changes or amendments to those minutes? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to accept those minutes. Do you have a second?
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We have a few non-budget articles for the annual town meeting in May, which I think you all received electronically. There should be 5 of them. And we have Peter Mullen here. Peter, why don't you come up, and we won't take them in any specific order, but since you're here, Peter, we want to make good use of your time.
All right.
Thank you very much for coming. Please explain your role and the article that we're talking about.
I'm here in the capacity as chairman of the Bylaw Review Committee. And maybe I ought to give a little bit of background about the committee. Back in, I guess it was 2013, the selectmen brought the Department of Revenue Local Services Division into the town. They did a fiscal review. And one of the things that they recommended was that the town appoint a bylaw review committee and review and update the bylaws. Some of the bylaws go back as far as 1938. There's a lot of really irrelevant things in the bylaws. It's a violation of the bylaws to ride a horse in the cemetery. It's also against the bylaws to throw coal ash in the street.
Good idea to
Perfectly
some of
fine
those
bylaws.
So that report by the Department of Revenue got referred to the Town Government Study Committee. I serve on that as well, and we ended up recommending an article to the 2015 annual town meeting to create a 5-member bylaw review committee appointed by the moderator to review the bylaws and make recommendations as to changes. And that committee didn't get appointed until 2016, and we had our first meeting on November 3rd of 2016. And the original article said that we would expire on our 3rd anniversary of our first meeting. So we're scheduled to expire November 3rd of this year, 2019. When that article was created, we looked at all the bylaws, and there were 4 really big bylaws that had a lot of, they were long, and they also seemed to have, you needed a lot of technical expertise. There was the Personnel Administration Bylaw, the Zoning Bylaw, the Stormwater Management Bylaw, and the Wetlands Bylaws. So we just excluded them in the language of the article from the scope of what this bylaw review committee was going to review. One of the things we've learned since we started this review was that we don't have a current up-to-date version of our bylaws. Right now on the town website, on the town clerk's page on the website, we have the general bylaws only up through the 2007 annual town meeting. And the planning board has the zoning bylaw up through 2009, I believe it is. And essentially, Susan Galvin has been reluctant to certify the bylaws as being accurate because she says when she became clerk, she didn't inherit an existing approved bylaw. You know, sometimes the bylaws will say amend this chapter and take this out and put this in, and you know, she has no way of knowing whether those things were actually done or not done. So she did some research and talked to other town clerks and stuff, and many towns, cities and towns have a service that codifies the bylaws, that essentially maintains an electronic version of the bylaws on a website, and they update it. This is a company by the name of General Code, and I forget exactly how many cities and towns they have in Massachusetts, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 cities and towns. So she reached out to them, she got a proposal from them, and they were willing to take our existing bylaws. They have a set format as to how they number the bylaws and things. They would convert our existing bylaws into their format, and the whole project would be $9,900. And so the bylaw review committee met twice with the people from General Code, and the planning board was, particularly when Alex Whiteside was the chairman, was very anxious to get a certified copy of what the bylaws were. And so the planning board had $9,900 in its budget, and they used that money to engage the General Code. And General Code is now in the process of trying to, pull together all our existing bylaws. They will put it into their format with a uniform numbering system, and then they will send the proposed draft back to us. And the town will then review this. General Code will make suggestions such as, you have this provision here, but you seem to have an inconsistent one over here. They'll attempt to point out things where we don't have defined terms that we should, or that we seem to have different meanings for the same term at various places in the bylaw. They'll send that back to us. We'll have to review that, and ultimately, the revised bylaw will have to go back to town meeting and get adopted by town meeting. And then at that point, there would be an existing agreed set of bylaws for the town, and then you can engage General Code for an annual maintenance fee, and whatever you do at town meeting to change any bylaws, they will incorporate that into the codified bylaws. And I talked with Susan today, and she said the fee right now is, I think it's $1,100 or $1,200 a year is the annual fee. And she said that she's expecting that if this all gets adopted and done, that that would be part of the town clerk's budget request. In addition to the annual maintenance fee, if you have new bylaws that are added, they will charge you a fee, as far as adding that to your existing database. But that's apparently on an article-by-article basis. The article that the Bylaw Review Committee has for this year's annual town meeting, essentially it has two purposes. One, it's to extend our term beyond November of this year, 2019. The article itself doesn't have a specific length of the extension, but we are, I think, requesting to you and would ask that your recommendation be for a 2-year extension to the life of the committee.
I just want to make sure everybody's clear. This is the article, and correct me if I'm wrong, to see if the town will vote to extend the term of the Town Bylaw Review Committee and to delete the following text from the vote of the 2015 annual town meeting under Article 43, which authorized the town moderator to appoint the Town Bylaw Review Committee, quote, with the exception of Chapter 10, known as the zoning bylaw, Chapter 13, known as the personnel bylaw, Chapter 15, known as the wetlands bylaw, and Chapter 21, known as the stormwater management bylaw, end quote. and to act on anything relating thereto. Is that the one
That is
specifically?
the article. And
So-
that was drafted for us by John Flynn.
So specifically, you would ask, would you ask the town council to amend this language, or are you asking us to make the recommendation to adopt it with the caveat it should be for 2 years?
Which
is your preference?
That you just insert in the recommendation to extend the committee, the term of the bylaw review committee for 2 years. For a period of 2 years.
Okay. 2 years beyond the expiration, which would make it November of 2021?
Yes.
Okay.
We don't think we're going to need all of that. I certainly hope we don't need all of that, but it's probably safer.
This does restore your original mandate to review things such as the wetlands bylaw, the zoning bylaw.
Yes.
So you think you can add the zoning bylaws in all these others in 2 years, or are you just not?
What we anticipate doing is, when we get the proposal back from general code,
Okay.
that the zoning bylaw would be referred to the planning board, and they'd be asked to review it, see if there's any things they want to change, correct, things that they think are wrong or whatever. The wetlands bylaw, we think would get referred to the Conservation Commission, and that we would just kind of serve as a coordinating point.
Okay.
There are extensive bylaws with regard to the Warrant Committee, and we would expect to come to you with the provisions relating to the Warrant Committee and see what you thought.
Peter, when you mentioned that Alex Whiteside, when he chaired the planning board, had engaged general code, is that for the zoning bylaws only?
It's actually for everything.
Oh, for everything?
Yeah.
So we have been paying these people?
We've paid them once,
Paid them
$9,900.
for the initial overview. What is their estimated time of completion for that?
They're supposed to be back to us on March 5th, by March 5th, with taking our existing bylaws and putting them into their format, and giving us, a uniform numbering system, and, they separate things into kind of a policy section and an organization section, we have bylaws, relating to the cemetery board of trustees. That would be like in the organization part of the bylaws, whereas, like the zoning bylaw would be in the policy section.
So would you anticipate, when they complete that, submitting that to the town meeting through us for adoption, ratification, or just for the format? What do you think will happen?
What we're expecting is that around March 5th, we'll get this proposal back. This will be several hundred pages. And that what we'll want to do is figure out what portions need to go to what organizations in town, what boards, departments, committees. We've been dealing with the town administrator, and we're going to try and get departments to focus on the bylaws relating to them, and if there are things that should be changed, that, to take this opportunity to do it. So that if there are things that need to be deleted, or that general code got wrong, or people didn't even remember they were still there, then, get whatever changes, corrections are made, then they would get that back to us. Then it would have to go back to general code, they'd have to get it incorporated into the text. Presumably we'd have to check it again a second time. And then it's gonna have to go to town meeting. That's, I think, gonna be difficult trade-offs, if it's just correcting misspellings and things, then I don't think there's gonna be any big issues at town meeting with regard to the substance of the changes. But it may be that the cemetery trustees say, we don't need this anymore, but we do want that in there. I think we're, at a town meeting, you're probably gonna have to flag those kind of things so people know what changes are being made, and then they would get to vote on them.
Peter, question. So, right now, what's it called, general code, is that the?
General code is the,
So they're in the process of just basically codifying everything.
Yes.
In their format, and that should be done relatively soon. But we still have the issue that won't, still will not be a certified bylaw, correct?
correct.
So how are we gonna resolve that?
Well, it'll become, when we present, when the
When we make all the
the
changes in
version,
town
when
meeting?
the codified version is presented to town meeting, it will get adopted by
Okay.
town meeting, and then we'll have a starting point where we can say, these are the bylaws.
That supersede what had been in place, et cetera.
Yes.
And what, I mean, if you had to estimate how much time that would take to cycle through, assuming that we get this on the 1st of March, and then we submit it to the various boards.
General Code, in their contract with us, they say 120 days for the town to review their proposal. Apparently, history has been that it's taken longer than that. I mean, you gotta split this thing up, send it out to various departments and boards and things, get them to look at it, and then get it back. And then, you gotta have kind of a central point of incorporating whatever changes, corrections they have. We think that process, it's possible that you could have something for a fall town meeting, but I think it's likely to go over to the next annual town meeting. Or if there was a special town meeting, it could go to a special town meeting.
It would be a long, I would have a feeling it'd be kind of a long process.
Yes, yeah.
Tom?
So, yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought because I was in the middle of that question and I lost it. So, let's see, I was talking about general code in the process right now. So when they come back, obviously it's going to be a little bit of a moving target because town meeting, there could well be bylaw changes in the interim.
Yep.
Is the town clerk, are we going to be updating and codifying those things as they go along, or is this going to be when it finally gets adopted, we'll start? The reason I say that is because I can just see another mess, because it could be, 2 years for your committee, and then we could be talking about this for another 5 years.
Hopefully not.
But I can see that happening. So, I mean, it would seem to make a lot more sense to retain them for the $1,100 a year or whatever it is, to just keep.
Yes.
Keep the meter will run for a while.
I hate
Yeah,
to see
I
that
see that.
pushed down the road.
Yeah. Well,
Because then we spent $9,900 for
Well, it's
nothing.
a legitimate concern because many of these things are complicated and it takes a while to cycle through. So yes, I think it's a very legitimate concern.
And that would be, I think, the suggestion that general code be engaged, to update, and after each town meeting where there's a change in bylaws, if it requires approval of the AG's office, it would go to the AG, come back, and then it would go to general code to get incorporated.
Wait, I'm sorry, but I apologize. Was that an answer to Tom's question, though, about in the interim while this is being done? I understand the answer to your question to be when this is over.
Right.
But what about in the interim, like this coming town meeting, these next three, the three town meetings of this year, essentially?
Well, I mean, I think the one in a couple of weeks, I don't think there's any bylaw issues that I'm aware of.
Sure.
But, we would have maybe a couple of year backlog of bylaw provisions. And it seems to me we'd have to go to general code and say, we've got these articles that were adopted during this couple of year period. What will you charge us to incorporate those into the codified database?
In addition to the $1,100 annual fee.
Right, that's kind of an annual maintenance fee. Susan said she didn't, have any figures on that, but that she believes it's not a big amount. It's hundreds of dollars, not thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's money very well spent, because it is very frustrating to go to the town's website.
Yeah, it sounds like there's gonna just have to be a date that these are the bylaws as of a certain date, and then whatever changes afterwards. Like, because otherwise it'd be a nonstop process of constantly
It's certainly
going
going to be
through and change.
it's a living process, it's always going on,
And
so yeah.
if there's any changes, as you were cited before, like say the cemetery commission's like, we want to change this and we want to take this out, is that gonna have to go through a whole like public hearing process? They're gonna have to have meetings on those, of these, or would they have to treat it as if they were amendments going to town meeting?
Well,
I mean, what's the process? Are people gonna try and make changes to the code through this document?
I think that will probably vary from department to department and board to board. You know,
Make
the.
it far more complicated
Yeah.
if they're making outright changes.
If, let's say the cemetery trustees said, we don't need the prohibition on horses anymore,
Yeah.
but we want this, that, or that provision. There's no, the public airing of that would be at town meeting in connection with adopting that provision of the new codified bylaws. If it was something,
The article for the town meeting would probably have to include those changes.
yes,
So the mailing to the town is gonna be that thick.
Yes, it'd be a phone book.
yes.
Kevin.
So my question is just in line with that, kind of the process, why wouldn't we attempt to codify as is? And then go forward with
Changes.
changes? Because at some point, we have to bring up 207, I think you said, 2007?
There are no certified bylaws
Yeah.
right now.
After that.
No, I mean, the last time they were, you said it's 2007?
No, they're not
Nineteen
certified.
thirty-two.
Well, I don't know whether or not they were actually certified.
Oh,
but-
they're just on
But
the-
Susan, it may have been that the prior town clerk had that on the website and she, just accepted it as, existing. I'm not sure.
Because I just was hoping the period of time was shorter, but so if we just need to get to a current state before adds and deletes happen is kind of where I'm going with this. Kind of the idea is what's the as is and how do we get that to where you could certify it, and then you're adding and subtracting articles and revisions, as opposed to doing it on the fly, which requires everything to be
Yeah.
debated and discussed. That's a problem.
Well,
That's like
I
never
think
gonna happen.
ultimately, they will have to go to town meeting, any of these
Yeah.
changes, because if you're eliminating bylaws, no matter how archaic, whether it's the coal ash or the horses or, leaving public stocks in front of the town hall, or removing them or whatever, they will have to go to the town meeting, I
I
believe.
think the whole code of bylaws.
Yeah,
is gonna
because if
have
it's been
to be
adopted by
about
town
so
meeting,
as
town
an
meeting is the
article.
only one that can change it.
Yeah, I mean, there are two separate issues. One is, did they get it right? In other words, is everything that has been there, should be there, was expected to be there, actually there? And is it all spelled right? And the second issue is substantive. Do we still need the, no gambling on guinea pigs, kind of bylaws? And that strikes me as totally outside of this process. In other words, right, whether some committee wants to change a bylaw, that just goes through the ordinary process. It shouldn't be a phone book. Hopefully, did they get it right isn't a phone book.
It depends on if they do
Well,
it at
it'll
this
be
time.
pretty big. I mean, the zoning bylaw is,
No, I mean the subsequent changes of things that were wrong. I expect the whole thing will be fixed. And what I mean is, if there were mistakes, that's what I'm talking about.
I think we're going to have to see to what extent any of the boards or committees or departments want to make any kind of substantive changes. I think if there wasn't a huge number of these, you could have 5, 7, 8, kind of substantive changes or rewrites, and, they could become separate votes at town meeting, and they could, it may be some of them are controversial, it may be there's no real controversy as to them. You could just have separate votes as to those, and they either would get changed or they wouldn't.
Yes.
Potentially over multiple years. And we're paying a maintenance fee to keep things up, and so we wanted to go through the whole process again.
So regarding the maintenance fee, I see this as a long-term, association with general code. What happens if they go out of business? Like, do we have rights to that data? Could we take it on ourselves and update the codes? Or is that something that would be transferable to another company? Or,
My understanding is that, yes, we would have rights to the database and we could get a copy of it. I think they do claim that their format for organizing bylaws is proprietary information. So I don't know exactly what they are purportedly the largest codification bylaw, municipal codification service that's out there. They're actually located somewhere in upstate New York, and they were just acquired by somebody, and I forget who acquired them, but they're, a subsidiary of a larger company.
so I guess I'd be concerned if maybe that $1,100 to $1,200 all of a sudden skyrockets, and then what's our out?
Right.
They own the format.
Have to see the contract.
Decide to
Well, that's what it
terminate
sounds
the
like they do.
contract, we
That's
would have to
that's a
reformate the
worthwhile
codes.
question.
It's.
How long is the
It's risky,
contract and
yeah.
what, yeah, oh yeah,
Is there,
absolutely, yeah.
you know,
Okay. Are there any other questions for Peter?
Just,
Doug.
didn't we, at a recent town meeting, authorize the town clerk to basically do what they're doing? Is this, because you mentioned
We did,
Alexander
actually, yeah.
Whiteside
Yeah, yeah,
from
we
the
did.
planning board
Yeah.
started this,
Yeah.
not the town clerk.
Yeah, yeah, we did.
It's the same process, just Alex maybe got the jump on it.
We can't force it.
No.
No, we can't force it, we just sort of,
I mean, I would look at this, what would be
Requested
the
of her,
cost
but
of
she's
hiring an
doing it.
individual to do this over a period of years? I would think $1,100, I'm sorry, $9,900 and then $1,100 annually is certainly cheaper than it would be to hire a full-time person annually to do this, no matter whether it's 3 years or 5 years. It's still cheaper.
yeah.
So-
It's,
They have the skill
the town clerk, as part of that mandate, would she be able to certify that copy once we're done with the process and
Once town
tinkering
meeting
with
votes
it?
it again.
Yeah, I would think once the
has
town
to
meeting
vote it
approves
again.
it,
Okay.
yeah.
So we are gonna have to
Votes it in,
basically
so
send
we
out
have
the
to
whole
go through it.
codes
Yeah,
again.
well,
Is that correct, Peter?
Yes, that, she would be the certifying person, and, what gets adopted at town meeting, some provisions have to go to the AG's office and come back, but once they came back, then she'd be able to say, this is a certified copy of, and they give you, I think, 10 hard copies of the, the bylaw as well. And then, I think if you make changes, then it's, loose leaf pages for a while, and then they'll recertify it.
Okay, so but for the 9,900 though, they're gonna take the 2007 published by law and bring it up to 2018? Is that what they're,
Yes,
and codified?
yes.
any other
We wanted
questions?
it done before anyway, so. We wanted it already done before anyway.
Any further questions? Peter, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate you coming.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are a total of 5 of these articles that Lynn put up on the website for us to look at on our shared drive. If we go back a little bit, we have one that is asking if the town will vote to discharge the legislative committee established pursuant to the vote of the 1988 annual town meeting under Article 7, and to act on anything relating thereto. The select board has asked us to look at this. I have no background on what this legislative committee does at this point, and it's 31 years old. I have children older than that, so it's kind of shocking to me that this would perpetuate without anybody really knowing what's going on. And I have no history with this. Tom, if you don't, then I don't know any of us here at the
No, I
table
mean,
who would.
I'd want to know,
Yeah.
what was it originally formed
Yeah.
for, and, what was
Yeah.
its purpose, and does it still?
Does it still serve a purpose?
It's still a purpose,
Yeah, exactly. I think that's worth asking, and I think when we do consider this, I think we should think about it. If anybody has any insight or can look into this before our next meeting, that would actually be worthwhile.
I'm kind of interested, actually.
Okay.
Happy to take that.
Thank you. All right, so
You can
Chris.
probably find that bylaw.
Yeah, I'll have to call, what is it, the code place?
Yeah.
General code.
Legislative committee
Take a visit
has,
up to Rochester.
it basically has two members on the
Find the actual
website.
town meeting warrant.
Now,
I'll
the
ask Susan for it.
another article which was filed is also on the shared drive, and this one relates specifically to investments by the treasurer of the town. The select board has filed this one to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to file a petition with the general court in substantially the following form, provided that the general court may reasonably vary the form and substance of the requested legislation within the scope of the general public objectives of the position. And it states, an act authorizing certain investments by the treasurer of the town of Milton be enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives and general court assembled by the authority of the same as follows. Section 1, notwithstanding Section 54 of Chapter 44 of the general laws or any other general or special law to the contrary, the treasurer of the town of Milton may invest trust funds that are in the custody of the treasurer in securities that are listed on the Standard & Poor's 100 Index, S&P 100. Section 2, this act shall take effect upon its passage. That represents a departure from the customary investments that are generally allowed by municipalities, where holdings should be in U.S. treasuries or municipal securities.
A little more than that.
And it's a little more than that, that's true, but to expand it to the S&P 100 is a departure.
Stocks.
Yeah, exactly right.
Right now, there is, the state actually has a published list of allowable securities that you
Right.
can invest in. That list keeps diminishing because
Companies are disappearing or taken over or consolidating. So using the S&P 100 will permit a kind of a living list, because yes, that list changes, but there's always 100 names on it. And they are the largest, most heavily capitalized names across a broad diversified index. I mean, we all, in the business, we all talk about the S&P 500. The S&P 100 is a very strong, a larger subset, larger in the sense they're larger corporations, generally speaking, because it's done by capitalization.
Sure. So just so I understand, when you say it's a departure, so I just wanted, so generally on the maintained list, there are securities that might fall on the S&P 100?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So
Absolutely.
it's a departure in the sense that they're not statically identified. It's
Oh, it's a
from the index
movable,
list.
it's a
Got it.
movable
Okay.
feast, yeah. I mean, the names have come and gone off that list over the years.
This is really for convenience.
Yeah, I would think so. Convenience and also in aspects of diversification too, which I think is in everybody's
the
interest.
thing, and the thing I want to make sure that there are two regulations depending upon the type of fund that you're investing. One is prudent investor rules, is allowable, and the other one, which is the authorized list. I'm not sure which is which of the trust funds, so, and I don't know if this will become then the criteria for investing all funds in the town, or just the funds in the town that are covered by that
Well,
Mass General Law.
well, the way this is written, invest trust funds that are in the custody of the treasurer.
So like the government
So I think that would be
still-
limited, because he wouldn't have access to, I really don't think he has access to the library trust or to the cemetery trust, for example,
Yes, he
would he?
does.
He does?
Oh, yes.
He has oversight of that?
No, this is just straight securities. It's not like an index fund or something.
It says,
Listed on the
securities that
index.
are listed on the S&P 100. So I'm assuming they're talking about individual securities.
Yes, okay, just to make sure
Yeah.
it's not going to be
Yeah, I think those are those are questions that we'd have to put,
latitude provided.
we'd have
Yeah,
to
so-
put to the select board or to the town administrator when that time comes.
And the first clause, I'm sorry, Kevin.
No, I could wait, but is it an assessment of risk, right? Is it saying moving away from treasuries and more restrictive investments to opening it up to a little bit more risk?
They would also
And
look at...
higher yield,
And
right?
higher return,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Because right now, the
Goes hand in
treasurers,
hand.
2% isn't
But
very
that's
exciting.
what it's at, is
Yeah,
that part
oh,
of
yeah,
what that
I
is?
would think so, yeah.
Except, and this is going to be my comment, Kevin, is that the first clause of section 1, notwithstanding section 54 of chapter 44,
What
which I don't
that
have in
says,
front of me,
yeah.
presumably that acts as a limitation. In other words, as long as it's not otherwise limited
Mm-hmm.
by the by the general laws, then that's permissible.
Right.
So, yes, but.
The question would be, what is the current restrictions that the town is imposing as opposed to the state? We might be loosening it up to the state level restrictions rather than something the town is imposing. Which I don't know.
The town right now does go off the
Yeah.
published.
But I don't know if we are more restrictive than the state lists or something.
I don't think so, on
Because
the
otherwise-
ones that are covered by that general law, but there may be other funds that aren't necessarily covered by that. There are two types of funds that the town can hold,
Yeah.
and like I said, one is prudent investor rules.
Yeah.
And, like, for example, investment of the affordable housing trust funds.
Yeah.
Can be prudent investor rules.
Are there certain trust funds, like I know there's the governor's Stoughton funds that have limitations built into them that this would then loosen up?
My guess is Governor Stoughton funds is probably prudent investor.
Yeah. Well, just as an
That's a
example, that's
guess.
the only
I
one that
don't-
comes off the top of my head of the
Certainly not an
funds.
expert.
That there might be some that are built into the trust when they were established. That is part of the instrument, are more restrictive, and this would like loosen them up to the others. I'm just figuring out why they have this or something. These are all
and again,
questions we gotta bring up.
I don't
Yeah.
specifically know the answer to that.
We also have, following this, in the legislative committee disbandment, a suggested form for the article to rescind certain authorized but unissued portions of amounts authorized to be borrowed to pay costs of several projects, which we have on the shared drive, and it involves sewer, fire building improvements, DPW, cemetery, locker rooms, garage. There's a whole laundry list of things here. I do not have background on this, and Mike was unable to come tonight. Tom, do you have?
What happens is, every year you vote a bonding article and you give authorization for the town to spend money. These are authorizations that were never spent. And they stay on as authorizations until such time as they're rescinded. So, for example, that $500,000 sewer could be spent. It's already been authorized. It can only be spent for that particular purpose. So if it's not needed anymore,
Is this a case where the cost might have been less than what was authorized?
sometimes yes.
Okay,
But like that sewer one, I can tell you that was just never spent.
never spent.
Because that would have been authorized as 500,000 originally. But some of, like that 18,000 could be just left over.
That's sewer mechanical rotting machine.
Yeah, I think the 197 is left over, never borrowed.
Roof replacement, right.
As opposed to, and we also have some stuff that we actually have borrowed the money but never spent it.
And that money is in the general fund?
That
or-
money would be sitting in the general fund and can be repurposed. There's not a lot of it,
No,
but,
but it's still nice to know that it's there. So the total that would be rescinded is $685,500, so it's not insignificant. But if that can be repurposed to other things, that would be worth knowing. But I suggest we look at this, and at the next meeting we have after the annual meeting, I hope that we will be able to have the select board, which is meeting this evening, I think simultaneously with us, will be able to come and just explain whatever intent they have for this, and that would be helpful to us. And I think that's it for the articles that we have received to date.
Can I go back to the trust fund
Please,
securities one?
yes.
Just because I just looked up the reference law.
Okay?
And it says, it's a long paragraph, so I'll cut to the chase. It says trust funds shall be, it says where it has to be deposited. And it says if the funds, cities and towns having such funds in an aggregate amount of in excess of $250,000 may also invest such funds in securities other than mortgages or collateral loans, which are legal for the investment of funds of saving banks under the laws of the Commonwealth And then there are restrictions on how much can be put in bank stocks or in insurance stocks. So, so that's really the limitation. And there are probably others that there's a catch-all.
So that's
clause
probably the
there.
published list is the,
That's very helpful.
Yep.
So they keep CMOs out.
Yes.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, well, that's worth knowing. Other than that,
Is there an article about the Yulin rink?
I'm sorry?
Is there an article about the Yulin rink?
Oh, I didn't pull that one up. We can pull that one up. And this is the lease on the Yulin rink. Okay. Why am I not getting these right now? Open. And Word Online. Oh, wow, wouldn't you know it? Okay, well, we do have that. Oh, you got it. Oh, thank you very much. Okay, you're faster than I am. Good for you. To see if the town, pursuant to Chapter 30B, Section 12 of the Massachusetts General Laws, will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a contract for management and operations of the Max Ullin Memorial Rink for a term not to exceed 10 years or to act on anything relating thereto. So a 10-year lease for the rink. I don't have any information about the
there is
potential.
there has been an ongoing Yulin Rink committee.
Right.
We should get them in here to discuss it. I don't, this is probably just a stock 10-year.
So whomever comes in, or unless they have people in mind already.
Authorization to be-
right now?
Curry uses
The
it quite a
town
bit.
has the town has the lease with DCR.
Right.
And it's been extended many, many times. The town then went out for RFP for a manager of the rink, because the parks didn't want to manage it, park department didn't want it. Obviously, the selectmen couldn't manage it. So they went out, and Curry was, I think there was a bid for a parent group bid it, and Curry bid it, and it was awarded to Curry. And it's been managed by Curry ever since. And it's also Curry's home rink, too.
When was that?
Oh, gosh.
That's a while ago.
It's
While
gotta
ago.
be 7, 8 years ago.
2008?
Yeah.
So are they looking for approval to put it out to bid again for the next 10 years, or?
The DCR, well, what the town wanted originally was to get a long-term lease, which DCR will not do. The state actually, Walter Timbledy, when he was a rep, actually got legislation through to allow, because prior to that, it was, I think, 5-year leases, and that was it, to allow for a long-term lease. DCR said the language in the legislation was flawed and they would not do it, and continued along. They've now gone to this 10-year. What the town really wanted, though, was a 25-year. Because the problem is the place is falling down. I mean, it needs a lot of, and the state's not going to put the money into it. So if we're going to put the money into it, then you don't want to. If you only have a 10-year lease and you're going to put some major improvements into it, that's all you can bond it over is 10 years. So that was part of the problem, but they weren't able, I don't think they were able to get the DCR to go 25. It has to go through DCAM, which is,
They're overburdened. DCAM's way overburdened.
yeah, I mean, there's a whole process, but
Well, I think we should have a little more detail on that before we come to some.
I think so, yeah.
So I think we'll have that. We'll try to have that at the next meeting. Also.
Can I make what I think was just a ministerial point, it's not on the substance? But I've just noticed with this article, and there might have been another, that it references Board of Selectmen.
Yeah. So
So if we can just
yeah.
make sure that we,
that they fix it too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So I'm assuming that the subcommittees are in process underway and have met with the appropriate groups, and if not, they're scheduling to do so, because we need to have that completed no later than the end of February, last week in February. Those should all have been done, because within the first week of March, we will be taking votes for the purposes of the warrant, to make sure that we have everything in place in order to start the drafting, which will take, this one is much more complex than the one we did in October and the one we did for February. So it will take time, and we have to be very clear about getting it all together, because there are a number of corrections and alterations that happen in the course of putting it together. So we want to make sure we have enough time to do that. So as we complete the work, and I should also say, if there are points within the meetings of your individual subcommittees that you think should come before the whole warrant committee, please don't be shy. Invite them, or certainly tell me, and we'll schedule them on the agenda. And if there are issues that we have to see that you think are important enough for us to see as a group, by all means, let's do it, because I don't want anything to go unconsidered by the group if you think it's important enough, or if they, conversely, if they think it's important enough too, because everybody obviously is entitled to a full hearing. With that in mind, if there is there any other business that we need to consider tonight before we adjourn? Yes, Kevin. All right.
Well, yeah, so the same line, the revenue picture.
Yeah. I have not seen it yet. It has not been shared.
This is getting ridiculous.
It is. I don't disagree. I think that we really need to see this before we can make any informed decisions. We'll make the request once again. It should be ready.
What's typical, when is it, when?
I remember having the same exact
Well,
conversation about this time.
What used to happen is the warrant committee prepared their own.
Yep.
And maintained the spreadsheet, which got confusing because the town also kept one. You were trying to go back and forth.
It's very
making
hard
sure
to
the two of them-
reconcile the two.
So, the town took it over a couple of years ago, I think. But the warrant committee's had it on a timely basis. This is the first time that.
It's kind of late. It should have been with us 3 weeks ago, give or take. I would have thought we would have seen it certainly by the end of January, because I'm thinking that's about when we saw it last year. But again, we'll make the request.
Does anybody know?
This-
No, I don't know why.
Well, I'm sure we'll have an explanation when it
Waiting for
finally
the
comes.
revenue figure so we can balance it.
Well,
Yeah, but
it usually
We've always
gets,
used estimate and refined them
yeah,
as.
it's usually
But I don't
refined.
know if that's the reason, because we might.
After appropriations are made and the government makes awards for this, that, and the
Yeah.
other thing. I
We
mean, we
know
have
what the
seen it.
governor's.
Yeah, they
proposal is
could
now.
have done it for level funding at the very least, so, but they know what the
Well-
chapter 90 is funds and stuff, right?
We'll make the request again.
You know,
That's
the
easy
governor's
to do.
bill's already,
Yeah.
Yeah.
budget's already out, but.
So noted, and we'll follow up. Other than that, I have no new business. Does anybody have anything that we need to consider before we adjourn? Our next meeting will be at the high school, at the town meeting. We will adjourn from our meeting to go up to the, well, I should say not adjourn, we will continue our meeting at the annual meeting. So we'll communicate the time. It'll be at Milton High, the 25th. I think it's one evening, because there are only 5 articles that we have to look at. Yeah, all right, well.
Are we meeting at 7?
We have, the town meeting begins at 7:30. We should probably assume 7 o'clock, because we don't have much business to consider. But if anything does come up, if they have any last-minute changes that often do happen, we may be a little bit earlier, but I think we can assume 7 o'clock, and the agenda will be published in enough time for you to have it. So if there is nothing else, the chair will entertain motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion?
Aye.
All in favor? Thank you all very much. Good night.